This is Rare on Purpose, identity coaching with Floyd. Look, most people spend their lives trying to become somebody, but the real work is in remembering who you already are. Life has been training you the whole time. Through pressure, setbacks, the moments you thought were breaking you. Every episode, I'm gonna break down identity, leadership, and the mindset of the rare ones. Cause the strongest leaders, and they don't follow the crowd, they move rare on purpose. Welcome back, y'all, to the Rare on Purpose podcast. So I wanna talk today about something I think a lot of folks are living, but not a lot of people have the language for. And that's really what this podcast is all about, making that translation. Look, a polished life can still be a borrowed one. I think I need to say that again. A polished life can still be a borrowed one. Look, some of y'all are not tired because life is so hard. You're tired because too much of your life is being carried by a version of you that was built to survive or perform or just be approved by other people. And the dangerous part is that version of you is probably doing a good job. All right, if you listen to this show, if you consider yourself a leader, if you're looking to accelerate your leadership, then that version of you is probably pretty productive, respected, successful. It's probably the version that everybody praises, but it could still be borrowed. That's what I want to get into today, because a lot of people are building, achieving, producing, handling business, but they feel absent from their own life, right? Everything might look solid on the outside. It looks mature, stable, polished, but deep down inside, something is off. And I don't mean off as in broken, just off. And sometimes that feeling is not because you're failing. It's because you're living from the adaptation instead of the identity. Let me make this plain. A borrowed life usually, it don't begin with deception, right? It begins with adaptation. Most people don't wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm gonna become disconnected from who I truly am. No, they learn how to be what they think is needed. They learn how to be useful, how to be safe, how to be low maintenance, especially when we get into these careers, especially in tech careers. All of my tech folks out there, you know how it is, right? We already have a certain preconceived notion of what tech is, what these tech geniuses are doing when we walk into the door, and we don't consider ourselves one of them. So we start doing things to become high performing, but low maintenance, right? We become agreeable. I just want people to see me as sharp, see me as strong, see me as impressive. But over time, you get rewarded for that, right? Like whatever you had to do to step out of yourself, it gets rewarded. You got the raise, you got the promotion, you get compliments, opportunities, respect. The doors start opening. And after a while, what started as an adaptation, it's like a false identity. And this is where it all gets kind of tricky. This is where you end up on the Zoom screen in my coaching sessions, right? This is where I ended up in my coaching with my coach, right? Because just because something is working doesn't mean it belongs to you. That's a hard truth. Just because something is working does not mean it belongs to you. Some people are not even living their life. They're managing the performance of a life. That's different. You could be managing it well. You could be carrying it well. You could even be presenting it well, but you're still not rooted in it. And if you don't have that root, you don't get the full power. And when I say rooted, I mean deeply connected to who you actually are. Not just who people know you as, or not just who gets results. Not just who survived the pressure. I know we all know that, right? Thrown into the moment, am I good enough? This is a lot of pressure. You survive. Oh man, this must be who I am. No, I'm talking about the real you, the underneath the utility and usefulness, underneath that role, and underneath all the adaptation. One of the scariest things about misalignment is that it doesn't always look like chaos, right? It can look like competence. Most of y'all probably have great discipline, leadership, maturity, good reputation. That's the scariest kind of misalignment, right? Because it's working. Why would you stop something that's working? That's why we end up staying in it for so many years. Because if your life is like obviously falling apart, then you know there's a problem. But when life is functioning, when it's producing, when it's being affirmed by other people who we probably hold in too high of esteem, then it's easy to just kind of think we're good. You can be successful in rooms that your real self never even walked into. And that matters a lot for leadership and like having a holistic balance throughout your life. You know, being a great leader at work and at home and in your marriage and in your family and with your kids and at church and when you walk down the street, trying to balance all of those together is going to take more alignment with your real self. Right? That's just the reality. Because if you're leading from an identity that's borrowed, then your leadership is really just maintenance. How are you going to really balance it? Because if you're just managing from an identity that's borrowed, you're leading from an image. You're leading from what you think you have to keep proving. And that's the problem, that cycle of getting stuck in proving, right? And here's how it shows up. It's going to show up in you over-explaining yourself. It shows up in approval seeking or people pleasing. Man, almost every single one of my coaching clients right now, coaching 9 folks right now, and every single one of them has this show up in something that they're trying to overcome, and that's people pleasing, approval seeking, right? It's going to show up in conflict avoidance, over functioning, taking on too much when you should say no. You should draw a boundary, but you don't, because you think that might show that you're not good enough, right? It shows up from not being able to rest, not being able to delegate cleanly. You needing your output to validate your worth, right? Because the problem here is your resume can grow faster than yourself, especially if you're not working on growing yourself, right? Working on the issues that you have going on, working on your uniquenesses. A title can grow faster than yourself. Your reputation grows faster than yourself. And when that happens, eventually the outside of yourself starts moving faster than the inside can hold. And that's when people start feeling disconnected from their own success. Your peace can get withered away, it's thin. People start saying stuff like, I should be happy. Or I don't know why this doesn't feel better. Or I don't know why this still feels off. Yes, because performance can produce results, but they can't produce that rootedness. That's so important when you get a super busy schedule and you're playing many roles. You might gain real good strides and learn great leadership ability in your work career and have the inability to bring that home because you're not coming from who you are. You're not settled in a presence. You're still negotiating with yourself. I think a lot of adults are still being rewarded for our old survival brilliance. A lot of us, man, we still being rewarded for our old survival brilliance. What helped us survive in one season of life is probably distorting our next season of life. You know, maybe you learned early that being easy to deal with can keep things calm. People won't look at you and question you. You learn that achievement makes you valuable, or being strong meant you don't have to ask people for things, right? Or being useful kept you close to what feels like love or belonging. Maybe you learn how to code switch. You know what I'm saying? I mean literally and metaphorically code switch so good. See, I could have said so well there, but that would have been code switching. You learned how to code switch so good that eventually you forgot what the unedited version sounds like. All of that can work, man. It can get results. It gets you the job, it'll get you the career. But if you never stop to ask whether it's actually you and start to merge and find this holistic version of you, you're going to spend years perfecting a life that's not home. It's a costume. You learn how to be what was needed. Then one day you looked up and realized that was what was needed, but it now replaced who you are, right? Now you got to keep putting that costume on every time you go into that space. That's the tension, right? And I'm not saying this to shame anybody. It's just, I'm talking to myself too. You know, a lot of strong people need language for what they're feeling and what they're going through. And this is not about throwing your whole life away. This is not about becoming reckless. It's not even about this whole bring your whole self to work thing. I care less if you bring your whole self to work. What I do want you to understand is who is your whole self, right? And start to honor it and integrate it across the board. So that way you're bringing more of it to work, home, fatherhood, motherhood, marriage, parenthood, all of it. And the first step out of a borrowed life is not a dramatic move. It's really just an honest one. Before you ask what should change, just ask what's false. What is false or forced or foreign? Ask yourself, what part of my life works well but it don't feel like mine? Where am I most rewarded but least rooted? What version of me gets the most applause? Just question right there. Because likely if it's the one getting the most applause, how did I get it? Did I get it from an honest place? Was it authentic? Where am I still being who I had to be instead of being who I am and want to be? And what have I been calling maturation? That really might have just been adaptation, right? That's the kind of honesty that can change your life. Because now you're no longer just asking about how do I keep succeeding? You're asking, is success even connected to my truth? Is success even me? Is your leadership rooted in your identity? It's a different level of work. Look, clarity is not a luxury. It's a leadership tool. It's absolutely vital in the toolbox. Because when you get honest about where you're performing, where you're shrinking, where you're editing yourself, where you're over-relying on your old adaptations, you stop wasting so much energy managing it all, managing all the costumes. The goal is to not be more impressive. The goal is to be more true. And let the chips fall where they may, because that's going to land you where you need to be. Then you really if you have something that you need to improve, you'll know. If you have something that is super useful in your industry, you'll know. The goal is not to become generic enough to be accepted. The goal is to become clear enough to be effective. So listen, if this episode hits you, sit with it. Don't rush past it. Don't reduce it to a quote. Toss it on your social media feed real quick. You can still do that, but don't reduce it down to a quote. But if y'all want to share it, please share it. Don't just say, man, that was good. You know how people do nowadays? They like to give that hit home. Yeah, they spitting bars. And then they just go right back into autopilot, man. I don't want y'all to do that, man. I love y'all too much for that. I want you to sit with it. You don't need a brand new life overnight. It's not that kind of podcast, man. You need the courage to stop lying inside the one you already have. That's the work. And if this expose something that you've been carrying but not naming, then that's the kind of work I coach people through every day. It's not just about self-awareness. This is about leadership, presence, peace. Peace, man. Identity, decision-making, the ability to carry your life from a place that's actually yours. A polished life can still be a borrowed one, but it don't gotta stay that way. This is the Rare on Purpose podcast, man. And thank y'all for joining me. I truly appreciate it. And if you want to find out more about my coaching and what I do, go check me out on Leland Coaching and look up J. Floyd, and you'll see what I bring to the table. You know, I'm coaching folks through this kind of stuff all the time, right? So if that's something you feel like, man, I think I need to grow in this area. Yeah, go to joinleland.com and check me out. Thank you, y'all, for tuning in, and tune in again next week or day or bi-week or, whenever the new episode comes out. Stay tapped in with me, y'all. Love y'all. Peace. Thanks for listening to Rare on Purpose. If this episode helped you remember something about yourself, share it with somebody you know that you think really needs to hear it. And if you're a leader trying to reconnect with who you really are and lead from that place, look, that's the work that I do through Rare on Purpose Coaching. You can go out to my website, rareonpurpose.com, or you can just tap into Leland Coaching and search for J. Floyd. Until next time, y'all, remember who you are and move rare on purpose.